for joining me for the Plant Yourself podcast. I'm your host, Howie Jacobson. All right, today we're talking food, politics, and school with Maria Solanki, who is running for school board in a district in Florida. So let's jump right in. Maria Solanki, welcome to the Plant Yourself podcast.
Oh, thank you so much for having me today.
You're shaking things up in Florida.
Yeah. Yes, I am running for Pinellas County School Board in St. Pete.
Cool. So people listening to this podcast who have not read any of the introductory material are going to be like, wait, why is he talking to an educator running for school board on the Plant Yourself podcast? So maybe we should get that out of the way first. What's one? I know you have. I've read a lot of your website and your material and interviews, and I know there's a whole host of topics that you feel should be improved in our educational system. But one in particular is why, you came to my attention. So what is that?
Yeah, well, I believe we need to look at the child holistically. And if we are not focusing on the food we give them for breakfast, lunch, and snack, we are just doing a junky job and we are not looking at that kid correctly. So that is a huge focus. I will be advocating for healthier meals throughout the week and meatless Mondays as well.
So when you say healthier meals, what does that mean?
I would be advocating to get rid of the soda pops, the chocolate milk. By law, they have to serve, not by law, by reimbursement from USDA, they have to serve cow's milk, but they should at least remove the chocolate milk because it's just loaded with sugar. Mm-hmm. Getting rid of the ketchups, the fried foods, don't make French fries, the standard. Don't make pizza the vegetable because it has tomatoes on it, which are a fruit. So yeah, healthier foods overall, because school should be a place of excellency. And trust me, I eat junk food at home. I don't claim to be this 100% healthy person, but again, schools need to be a place of excellency. And when there are just constant birthday parties and cafeteria food loaded with oil, processed food, we're just setting kids up for disaster.
So it's interesting. I'm curious, and we'll get into your story because this is a recent sort of twist and turn in your educational advocacy. But what, as you're a public figure, you're asking people in your community to support you. What do you hear from parents? I'm sure there's a gamut, but what are some of the things you hear from parents when you say, hey, we need to clean up our kids' foods to make them more successful?
I have not heard one negative thing from a parent. Now, from other community members who don't have kids or who are grandparents, very few people have gotten back to me and made, a comment acting like I'm, forcing choices or taking away choices and forcing other choices. But from the parents, I have not heard one negative thing from parents. They are like, yes, change this food. Tater tots and ketchup need to go. I mean, parents know their kids will eat a hot dog, mac and cheese, peanut butter and jelly. And that's basically the list. That's why kid menus at restaurants have those items. And I think a lot of parents know that if their child sees, it's the peer pressure, but if the child sees everyone else eating healthy, they're more inclined to eat healthy. And I know for my daughter, like for her snack, we just pack fruit. That is like the go-to. She now has convinced me that on Friday she can get like a Cliff Bar, or some type, so sometimes we make them at home and sometimes it's like a packaged one. But the kids in her school will have these gummy snacks all the time that say like real fruit. Like, just give the kid real fruit. Yeah. And so a lot of parents are frustrated. They're just like, they don't want to be the annoying parent that's like, no, you can't eat the Oreos. No, you can't have the ketchup. And it's kind of just, it's better for everyone because sometimes we just do it out of guilt. We don't want our kid to be the only one. But if everyone was eating healthier, it would just encourage kids to eat healthier. They see what's going on. So the parents are like all for it. I mean, I have parents that come up to me that are healthy to ones that are morbidly obese, and they know their struggles that they went through, and they don't want to see this continue on with their kids, but it just gets difficult competing with everyone else.
I'm suddenly remembering one of my like not greatest moments of parenting. We lived in it wasn't a cul-de-sac, but it was a sort of a street separate. It was, in Ewing, New Jersey, separated from sort of Main Street. So it was its own little neighborhood. And then on summer afternoons, the ice cream truck would come by, and we were vegan and feeding our kids healthy. And my kids would always come running, begging, crying that they want, all the other kids were going to get the ice cream. So I remember like running out into the street and like yelling at this poor kid driving the ice cream truck, basically like he's taking away my parental rights by imposing this stuff on me. And like it was not a great sort of emotional control moment. And I'm feeling, a fair amount of shame as I recount it. But I do remember like there was a righteous anger, like, don't make me be the bad guy with my kids when I'm doing everything I can at home to support their healthy growth, and the peer pressure is turning me against them.
Yeah, that happens all the time. And look, like I've had benefits from changing my diet. I do realize we're all going to die, but again, it's just, when I lived in India, and I don't know if we'll get into this at all, but when I lived in India and I volunteered at the orphanages, I would do dinners for them. So just the regular evening dinners. And I remember the one time I wanted to do a like somewhat special celebration, and I wasn't allowed to bring ice cream because it was during like their exam times. And I was just like, man, that seems so strict. They can't just have like a scoop of ice cream. But now looking back on it, I think, that mindset is so good, because I see people in my own family that they just have this whole pantry full of garbage. They will allow kids to eat like sugar by the spoon. I mean, it's so unfair. We think about giving our kids the right tools and resources so they can, do good in math, do good in reading. But how do we not comprehend this idea that we need to provide them proper food and nutrition so they don't get sick, so they aren't diabetic, so when they graduate they don't have high cholesterol and blood pressure and all these other things that come into life. Like there's too much of a disconnect, and we really need to connect the kids holistically. And this is such an important part, because so many kids have their breakfast, their snack, their lunch, and even take-home food in many schools for the weekend to hold them over.
But it's not just like a blind spot around kids, though, right? It's like I coach adults, and I coach people around health and nutrition, and they have an understanding. But I also coach people in the business world who are highly intelligent, very successful people, and they don't consider what they eat to be relevant to their performance.
But again, if we have not taught that from a young age, if we haven't created this environment from a young age, then why would we expect so much differently when they get older, right? It's just like, I say to people, well, I actually not the biggest fan of the term Meatless Monday, because it sounds negative, because less is a negative, word. This is like an opportunity Monday where we bring in different beans, kidney beans, black beans, chickpeas, lentils, red lentils, pink lentils, yellow lentils, all these other opportunities that in the US, many families do not eat. I mean, even adults that will not eat these legumes, but in other countries, it's part of their daily staple. So if we're not training ourselves to eat this at a young age, it's just, I make like a homemade Nutella with just dates and hazelnuts that I find absolutely delicious. My daughter is like, gobbling it up. I'll give it to her friends and they're like,
yeah,
they think they're gagging on it. Because they're not used to it. They're used to these processed foods, and they're changing their taste and their molecular development to not even accept anything like that. I mean, I know when I first had kale and orange juice, it wasn't like the best, and now I'm like, oh man, I crave kale orange juice like all the time.
Right. Yeah, it's just not the same without that added flavor of palm oil and slavery, right?
Yeah, processed sugars. Yeah.
So so the parents that you're talking to are supportive of this idea of like, let's stop, poisoning essentially our kids, but do they have, like, what's their level of understanding about the connection between what we eat and, both the kids' performance and mood in the day, but also the trajectory of their health going forward? Is there some sophistication there, or are people like surprised when you talk?
Well, we haven't gotten into such in-depth conversations with everyone. It's more of, I hand my palm card. We're at the parks. We're walking around the farmer's market, and they're like, oh, yes, I love this. So I get, it's hard to say what their understanding is. Few messages that there are those parents that do get it, that do understand that, 1 out of every 3 people diagnosed with diabetes is a child. The fact that 20% of kids in Florida are obese, and it goes up for minority families. So I don't know how much of the science they know, because you talk to so many people throughout the day, all day long. I'm talking to people, but we do constantly post things. So we're posting, Forks Over Knives was posted on my campaign page. Game Changers was posted. Cowspiracy, I believe, was posted. So we're putting out information from PCRM, nutritionfacts.org. All these things are going out there. So I believe they're, receiving the information, but to what extent they're at. But you can tell they're hungry for this. They're hungry for the knowledge. They want better for their kids. So there is some understanding, because when I hand that palm card, there's 3 points on there, and they see that second point and they're like, oh yes, definitely for this nutrition. Yes.
What are the other 2 points?
School choice, promoting private, traditional, public, charter, homeschooling, and then community involvement. So getting them involved with businesses, internships, after school programs with different organizations.
Gotcha. So who's opposing your candidacy, and how are they going about it?
Well, even if you're talking about the nutrition, no one is necessarily opposing it. They just don't think it should be a focus. So I haven't gotten any opposition directly to that. It's just they don't understand the value of having it as a focus.
So it'd be like
there was
right, like you have some trivial issue, like we should wear green shirts at gym instead of red shirts.
Right. Like there's this one organization here, and I've been reaching out to them for 5 years. CoQueb, I believe, is the name. But they focus on bridging the gap between minority students. And I've been telling them, look, 70% of African American Asians are lactose intolerant, and they are forced to, they're not forced to drink it. It is mandated that cow's milk be offered to them, so they don't have to drink it, right? And I was like, we need to look at this meal program. It's not just that carton of milk, but it's the cheese that gets put onto the meal. It's the yogurt. There's so many aspects of it. And if we're constantly literally giving them poison, how do we expect them to perform well? Because then they have upset stomach and diarrhea, and they're irritable, and they may not be able to sit still. There's so many other factors that come into play. I know when I was on antibiotics, I felt like I was high. I was so drugged up. And this was, 5-6 years ago. But I just, can't understand why people don't see this connection between meal and mental focus and performance. And so the leader of this organization said it's just not a priority. They have other priorities to focus on. And when one of the other people that was in that, I brought it up to him, and I found out last year or the year before that the other guy actually became plant-based. But they still don't see this as a priority to take it to the community. And so many times, there was this other foundation. It's called the Foundation for Healthy St. Pete. I went to their annual meeting probably 4 or 5 years ago, and they just kept saying, how are they going to bridge they wanted health equity for the Black people, for the minorities. Why are more Black people at risk for diabetes, cholesterol, heart disease? And they kept saying the Black people. The breakfast buffet had donuts, croissants, and fake processed juice. Okay. The lunch meal was this wrap filled with chicken, mayo, and cheese with potato chips and chocolate chip cookies. And I wrote to them, I'm like, look, I will provide you doctors. You want different melanin doctors? I will give you those doctors. I will organize the doctors to come and speak. But that meal that you provided was not healthy. Okay. And there's no reason. So I call BS right there. I call BS that you guys actually care about minority health, because this is not hard. This is not expensive, but we need to promote proper nutrition. And I get that, like I said, they could have a party, but when your foundation is called a Foundation for a Healthy St. Pete, and you are trying to have health equity for minorities that suffer from diabetes and cholesterol and obesity at a higher rate, you should not be having chocolate chip cookies and chicken wraps with potato chips and mayonnaise and cheese. Okay, get a quinoa salad there that could be so delicious, full of flavors. Get fresh fruit. Don't have donuts. I mean, that to me is just total BS. And so I'm going to be whistleblowing a lot of people that may not want to hear the message, but I'm here for the community, and the message has got to get out there. This has to be a priority.
Yeah. So as I hear you say that, there's a part of me that feels really uncomfortable as I think about how that message is received. It feels like scolding from someone who's not in their community. I'm wondering what their response was.
Well, okay. First of all, the Foundation for a Healthy St. Pete doesn't necessarily mean everyone has high melanin levels, right? There are Caucasian, there are Black people there. So actually the people I was speaking to on all these times happen to be Caucasian people. But when I go into the community, I have a lot of great people helping on the campaign that are Black, they're African Americans. I tend to not say African American just because I have so many Haitian and Jamaican friends, and they're like, I am not African American, I am Black. I'm like, all right. So I have people working on this campaign. The wonderful girl that set up, I shouldn't call her girl, the wonderful lady that set up this interview, she is all about nutrition, and the Black community is one of the largest growing plant-based people to join the plant-based. So when I talk to the parents, they absolutely want it. I feel like it's this upper level that is trying to block the information, almost like they're saying, oh, no, we know more and we can't. They're not ready to listen. They're not ready to take this information on. And I'm like, well, why are you going plant-based? Why do you understand the importance of being plant-based, but you feel that these parents can't understand it? I'm not like that. My family's an interracial family. So I don't judge people based on melanin level, whether they can take on information to make them healthy. All right. People can understand this information, and I'm not going to belittle someone by saying they can't understand this information.
Mm-hmm. I mean, the other thing I'm thinking about is thinking about the Black activists in that plant-based and vegan community. One of the things I've learned from them is around cultural appropriateness of food, right? So like a quinoa salad sounds great to me, right? I mean, 20 years ago, I didn't know what quinoa was. I couldn't pronounce it. Quinoa, what the hell is that? Right. But,
Absolutely. But if you look at food from around the world, that's fine. I mean, the quinoa salad is like one of my best recipes. So I say it, and I started only making that like last year. Okay. But that's fine. I mean, there is so much food. Ray's Soul Vegan here in St. Pete, he makes a lot of great food. I mean, like I said, my family's interracial, so we use food from all over the world. And if you look at food originally from Africa, there is so much plant-based food. There absolutely is. So that's fine. But is this food in school more culturally sensitive or something? It's just terrible. I'm just saying, let's make that food healthier. Okay, so even if you want to keep the kind of, you're still serving a burger, well, can we have a healthier burger? Can we have a bean burger that tastes just as great? So I'm not there. This. I mean, there are so many options out there. So let's have those options. We just did a festival last month, and we did it in a predominantly Black community. I would say half the people that attended were Black, half were white. And of course, there were Asians. But 1,500 people attended. We provided food for 1,000 people. They loved the food. They absolutely loved the food. And I think the food was American and Vietnamese mainly. We had a lot of great Vietnamese volunteers there that stepped up and promoted it, but they love it. Good food is good food. All right. So people will enjoy it for sure.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. So, from your reading about your journey to this point, the thing you were involved in, I guess, in 2019 was trying to start a charter school, right? And you hit a lot of roadblocks there.
Yeah, so we were opening up the first plant-based public school, and this application is not a simple application. It's like 22 sections ranging from curriculum writing to finance, 1-year projections, 3-year projections, to food, to security. So it was about a 500-page application, and I worked on it with several other people. And it was denied. So some of the reasons were valid, but some of the reasons were they just weren't open to school choice. And the milk law reimbursement, you're not allowed to discriminate against the drinking of cow's milk before school, after school, on school grounds, or at any school-sponsored event. And because we wanted to keep it plant-based, they said, they wouldn't be able to fund the meal program, which then put us in a negative situation for our budget, which then, caused us to not get approved. One of the reasons we weren't approved. But yeah, that was, one thing we were working on. And I tried meeting with every school board member. I would email them. I would call. They refused to meet. We had, well over 100 people write in because it was during COVID. So they weren't having in-person school board meetings, and they just refused to meet with us. And then I said, now you're going to lose your seat, and I'm going to take that seat, and we're going to do what we got to do to make some healthy changes.
So the hang up over the milk is this like a state law or a federal law? So USDA.
So it's not a law. It's the National School Lunch Program Reimbursement Policy. So technically, if you didn't want to take that reimbursement for this meal program, you could find funding yourself. But as you know, we're already like on tight budgets in schools for programs. So it would be very difficult to take money away from one program to purchase plant-based milk because you didn't want to take the reimbursement.
So and so what they said was, we will reimburse you as long as you offer cow's dairy beverages to all the students, and that was a deal breaker for you.
That was written in the Well, so it's not even just offering the cow's milk. Like, I mean, you have to offer it first before you offer water. You can't discriminate against the drinking of cow's milk. So we asked them, does telling the truth about the nutrition negative effects of cow's milk constitute as discriminate? And they said yes. So, I suffered from arthritis my whole life until 8 years ago when I went fully plant-based. And I mean, from the time I was 2 years old until the time I was nearly 30, I had arthritis throughout my entire body. So for me, it's like an injustice not to tell other people about this, the truth about dairy. Mm-hmm. That was a deal breaker for them.
And I guess it really highlights the dual roles of the USDA. We think about the USDA as kind of ensuring food quality, but they're actually federally mandated to promote the sale and consumption of U.S. agricultural products, including meat and dairy.
Well, they are not mandated. They create that mandate. So USDA could absolutely change that policy to pay for plant-based milks as well, but they continue to mandate the cow milk and not subsidize the cost of the plant-based milk.
And it seems like I'm blanking. Is Vilsack the head of the USDA right now? Tom Vilsack. So, but whoever the president is, whether I strongly agree with their general views or strongly disagree with their general views, they always pick someone who supports animal agriculture, which really kind of pisses me off. Like,
yeah, and it's funny because there's been so much talk about pharmaceutical companies in the last 2 years with vaccine mandates and whatnot, and a lot of anger going on. But the largest consumer of pharmaceuticals is the animal agriculture industry. So then it goes right into the animal, which goes right into our bodies. And we can get into a whole line of issues that are created from this. And that's why I'm like, whistleblower moment here is getting everyone aware of it. It's not one thing. There is such a trickle effect. And then we get these kids obese and diabetic and sick, and now there's more medicine for the pharmaceuticals to sell, and more things for people to pay for, taxpayers to pay for. It is a vicious cycle that they've gotten this whole country fooled. There are very few people that understand how important this is at this point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So something else that occurs to me is that you're doing this in Florida. And so we're talking about education in Florida, and education in Florida has been in the news, like the top of the news around, alleged critical race theory in math textbooks. And so I'm struck by like your three bullet points of your campaign are like messing with my head a little bit. There's extremely what I would consider progressive views that are sort of aligned with the left, aligned with racial equity and justice. And there's also, school choice has been a very right-wing issue in terms of, well, let's defund public schools so that we can teach whatever we want.
Not defund public schools. That's not what school choice
but that's
is.
in a sense that's then the argument from the left that it's an attempt to undermine the public education system. So I'm curious how you straddle. Like, there must be people mad at you from every stripe.
I know, my friend Keisha King, acquaintance, she said, you're on to something good when you got the Democrats and Republicans mad at you. It's true. You've totally hit that one on the head. But at the same time, I also have support from both sides. So there is the slow to warm up from both sides. And then there's people who are just like truth seekers. And that's what I say all the time. I am a truth seeker. If it is a Democrat issue, if it is a Republican issue, I just want the right issue. That's it. I want what is best for kids, and it is what it is. That's it. I can't change to, I'm not loyal to any party. I'm loyal to, my beliefs, and then I have to do what is best for the children.
Mm-hmm. Well, that already makes you an outlier, because what I've seen over the past 2 years, I mean, just reading about, 2 days ago when the mask mandate was repealed and the pilots came on airplanes in the middle of flights and said, we don't have to wear your masks anymore. Like, half of the people on the plane took off their masks, and the mask wearing was entirely along political lines, as if there's no scientific basis to make a decision. It was just, what team are you on? And it must be hard to say, this isn't about my team. This is about my beliefs and the sources that I choose to give credence to, as opposed to, I don't want to offend my team by taking a step out of line.
Yeah, I see. Everyone says I'm so brave. I don't feel that way at all. I'm just so tired of like nonsense. I'm so tired of like beating around the bush. Like, I've been knocked down so many times that this is not hard for me to stand with what I know is right. Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely the outlier. My brother-in-law always says, ain't no one putting you in a box anytime soon. It's true. I mean, we have to say what is right for the kids.
Do you find that when you start by taking that kind of stance, that other people kind of wake up from their conformity?
Absolutely. And, I want to mention, I run nonpartisan. So, but yeah, absolutely. I mean, I first went plant-based over 18 years ago. And what was in the grocery store 18 years ago, like, you had one option of a plant-based soy milk that was like $8, $9. Now you have so many options there. And, I lived in Italy, I lived in India. So I've been able to see plant-based nutrition across the globe and the options that have come out. And just talking to people, I come from a family of hunters and butcherers, and they will continue, to do that. But just seeing small changes on what they eat and reading ingredients and making sure that they're organic. And yeah, I definitely have seen the changes. You've seen the changes in restaurants, even mainstream. Now, I mean, I know the mainstream places serve garbage, what I, don't really advocate for, but just seeing that mindset already start changing. Absolutely. When I start talking to people, they are getting it. I get text messages from people literally around the world, and it'll be like a picture of their shopping cart, and it has more fruits and vegetables. Like, I attribute this to you. But when they're in person with me, they'll make comments like, all right, stop talking about that now, Maria. Okay, stop. But then these little seeds continue on, and they are making the changes for sure.
So let's say you win. In August.
I will.
And now you're on the
Yes, I will win.
Now you're on the school board, and you have enough support and collaboration to start making changes. What does it actually look like? And I want to frame the question by saying that I think about, like, there was this documentary with Jamie Oliver. You know what I'm talking about? The British chef who went to some American school and was like, you people eat crap.
Right.
I'm going to show you how to do it right.
Right. And they got really mad at him.
And he ended up pissing everybody off, empowering no one, and just walking away feeling superior and wounded. And I'm wondering, like, what's your approach to actually succeeding as opposed to just being righteous?
Right. Great. That is an excellent question. One thing I cannot wait to do is have after school programs with families. So remember, you started off by asking me, what have parents said about this? I've gotten not a single negative pushback from a parent at this point. Now, granted, how many thousands of parents have I spoken to, and how many tens of thousands do I have left to speak to? But having after school programs for parents to, have food tasting, food demos, speak to it. There's a school here that is a plant-based school up in Tarpon Springs, and they transitioned to plant-based maybe 3 years ago, might be 4 years ago. But, when I first started talking to the owner, I was like, she was doing like once a week, and it was it was an option. And then I connected her to a plant-based cardiologist, an endocrinologist, and then they took off on their own relationship to put these talks together for parents, so parents do understand the information. They do understand why it's important. I would feel that it would be hard pressed to find a parent that was like, no, I am against fruit. Don't you dare give my child fruit. That is a terrible idea. So most of these things that it's not radical. We're just saying, like, get off the sugar, give the kids the sugar at home. All right. My kid will still eat sugar. Okay. We buy the Ben & Jerry's plant-based sugar ice cream, give it at home, but just keeping this school as a place of excellency and, working with these menus to make sure kids like it, because you can't force kids to eat things they don't like. We can encourage and, get things to change, but we have been talking to other schools that have made the transition, working with the menus. I've talked to the kids at the Solid Rock, that plant-based school. I've interviewed the kids. I spent, a lot of time with them, and they love the food. I mean, they'll have these great tacos and chili soup, shepherd's pie. There are so many options out there that, quite honestly, like, a lot of people don't even realize. If they have it, they don't realize it. Like, my neighbor, hunts and fish, and I'll bring him over food all the time, and he likes it. He sends me pictures that he took extra to work, or he'll ask where I got something from. So a lot of times it's just the exposure, because if you haven't been exposed to it, then you don't even realize how good it is and that you would like it. But my daughter's birthday parties, every year we do this giant spread, and again, a lot of hunters and butchers that will come, and they're like, this is good. I can't believe these flavors. And we'll do everything. We'll have like Indian and Vietnamese and Italian and American, and everyone they can't believe it. They're going plate after plate after plate. So I don't, and with Jamie, he came in maybe with anger, whereas for me, it's kind of like, I felt I could have lived a healthier life had I known this sooner. So it's sharing the information. Of course, parents can always pack their own food. They can always pack whatever they want to, but I think having those after school programs, and even during, connecting them to doctors and nutritionists and athletes, it's really just, getting the information out there and not looking down upon them. I don't look down upon hunters or butchers. I was raised in that family. I know they are good people. I want them to be successful. I just think we can be more strategic and smart at what we are feeding our children and how we are growing and, harvesting food. So I think coming with this humility and sharing, like, this good intention of sharing information, I think is key.
So one of the things that Jamie Oliver encountered was resistance from the people who had to cook the food, right? They knew how to do the USDA thing. They knew how to order this stuff in bulk. They had kitchens that were set up to sort of like mass defrosting these meals. And, that he kind of came in and said, well, you guys are poisoning the kids. You need to do it better. And let me show you, I'm the world's famous chef. And like, what do you know or expect or anticipate around the employees? I think the food service people, many of whom are not treated well and not paid well and not respected.
I've been reaching out to them for several years, so my name is pretty well known probably there. They've actually done really great work. Again, I think for my spiritual practice, I always try to be humble and not come across as knowing everything. But when I've reached out to Ms. Geis there, like actually, I think it was someone else, Gerard, that was beforehand. Maybe I shouldn't even say the names, but they have made a whole other menu that is great. I mean, I've had doctors from PCRM look at their meal program, their other menu that technically should be offered to all schools, but they haven't advertised it, right? So it's a great healthier menu. So if kids request it, it could become available. That menu is beautiful. What I've heard, so I've also collected like hundreds of signatures from parents asking for these healthier meal options. I forgot to mention that, but I emailed them. I would go to school board meetings asking for healthier options, and I would talk to them on the phone at food service. I would talk to email the superintendent. So this is not like Jamie Oliver was not part of the community, was not involved in education, and just went in and boom, boom, boom. Like, I have been walking, talking, doing education in this community for these years, for several years, and really trying to work together with everyone. So it's not like one day I just decided to run for school board. I tried that process to get things growing. Well, I would love to say that Ms. Guy said, she agrees that plant-based food is more nutrient dense, but she wants to make sure parents are okay with it. So it really does feel like if she has more parent support, she would be open to doing it. And she would be interested in doing it school by school and putting information out there to the families and parents, which, I think is a great idea and something I want to be a part of, which, I said, I'm like, please let me know. I would love to volunteer to help get this information out for parents. But so to answer your question again, I do believe that the food service program is open for it. They just don't know if parents are open for it. I know that there's so many parents open for it. So it's just kind of like everyone's thinking something, someone's thinking something here and someone's thinking something there. We just need to connect it all together and put it as a priority. But I think people are 100% ready for this. I mean, ketchup is not a vegetable. It's not even it's a fruit, but it's not even a fruit.
Mm-hmm. So one of the things I wonder about, and I was an educator in a previous career, and I know that there are parts of the educational industry that care very much about results and evaluation, and they want to know, does this work? Does this method of teaching writing work better than that method of teaching writing? I also know there's huge swaths of the educational landscape that are dogmatic and don't care if something works as long as they're comfortable with it and it feels right. Like, so the whole question about, phonics versus whole language reading, like the debate was largely about morality as opposed to efficacy. But I'm wondering, in your case, it seems like it's a no-brainer that if you change the way kids eat, they're going to perform better. They're going to get in trouble less. They're going to do better on tests. And I'm wondering if first of all, if that's something that your community or Florida in general cares about. And if so, if there are researchers who are sort of, circling and like getting excited about the possibility of actually putting this to a test.
Yeah. I mean, we've been talking with researchers for 4 or 5 years about this. If the charter school was going to be approved, how would we take this forward? So at this point, running for school board, I haven't, because I announced last month in March, I haven't spoken to them, but I mean, of course, that is going to come up eventually. Whether we're talking about attendance, how many kids are now coming to school and not getting sick? When we're talking about behavior disruptions, I mean, we've seen jails change their meal program and have better behavior inside of jails. Or if we're talking about test scores, which is another interesting thing because the testing will change next year. There will still be some sort of testing, but so I think, there will be a lot to look into, and I'm not sure how they'll conduct the study, because once kids go home, they'll eat what they want. But I think having them in school now and kind of seeing where they're at, they should be able to get some results. But, you know, I'm not totally sure when that will happen. But I would assume that would be huge here.
How many school board members are there?
There's 7 total and 4 up for election this year.
Have you spoken to the 3 who will definitely be, continuing? Do you know like their perspective on any of this?
I've tried, but I've never gotten a response back from any of the 3.
So when you land your seat, you might be a bit of a wild card to them.
Yeah, there is actually someone else running that is has a big focus on in her personal life, she has a big focus on nutrition, not necessarily implementing that into education, but maybe she'll change.
Is the voting system that like you're running against another person, or is just everybody running?
I'm running against one other person she's one of the people that is on school board right now. So I would be running against her.
So she's got some sort of incumbency advantage, presumably.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So you strike me as an extremely energetic person. So like you probably go, and you mentioned that you've met thousands of people. How else are you campaigning? Are you taking out ads or canvassing? What are you doing?
Yeah, we haven't done ads as of yet. I have been door knocking, phone calling, volunteers. It's all been volunteers. We will have our first fundraiser at Lotus Vegan on May 12th here in Pinellas Park. And then I actually have a decent amount of high school students that volunteer. So we are supposed to be canvassing tomorrow. So and that's another thing, like talking to the students too, they want change in the meal program. In fact, that meal program I was telling you about that is healthier, that came about from the students. That was not even from the district themselves. There were students that were complaining that wanted more options. And that's how we got those 9 other items, or it might be 11, that are healthier. So yeah, I canvass, I door knock, I go to parks, I speak at events. We do these podcasts. So it's just everything, getting the word out there. We have people on social media that will post in different groups. It goes all day, every day.
Yeah. So you mentioned before we started that you're legally blind. Can I ask you about that? Is that from birth?
So when I was 2 years old, I got sick, and then that developed into arthritis. I was paralyzed. I then had vision problems, cataracts when I was 6 and 7 that were removed, and then had other eye conditions, calcium bumps, cornea bumps, like all these other things. So I had 5 operations on my eyes before I was 17. And then when I was 19, I was rear-ended, and I lost a lot of vision at that point. And then when I was pregnant, I lost even more vision. So yeah, kind of from birth, but staggered throughout.
Was there a point in your life in which that was like, you seem like a person who's like unstoppable in terms of like what you want to do. Were there times in your life where the blind?
Oh yeah. When I was rear-ended, I had to take a medical leave from college, and I was put onto steroids on Thursday. By Saturday, I was like suicidal. I had extreme depression, and that lasted the whole time I was on steroids. They told me I would gain weight, but they wouldn't tell me that depression was a side effect. But that lasted for a long time. Even afterwards, it was really bad when I was on all the medication, which is why, I feel really bad for people that are on so much medication. So it wasn't until like I was probably 22 that I felt cured of my depression. But yeah, that definitely slowed me down. And you'll get moments every now and then where you're just frustrated because it's such a simple task to do. And yet, because you can't see it, it's like, if my phone screen goes super light, and you won't be able to like see it, and you're like just finagling that. Or, I have to take Ubers everywhere, so trying to find the Uber to pick me up, to drop me off. And because people look at me, they don't see that I'm blind. So there's, a lot of rudeness that will come. Like, a lot of times I'll have my cane. A lot of times, sometimes I have my cane, sometimes I don't. If I'm walking with someone, I tend to hold their elbow, or if I'm with my daughter, I'll hold her hand. So they can't see that I'm blind, and then I'll ask them a question, and like, it's right there. Or they'll point, and I'm like, are you pointing or are you reading something? Because I can't see you pointing over there. I'm blind. And then, they're apologetic, but there is definitely a lot of rudeness that goes on. I mean, like, I prefer them to swipe my credit card at the grocery store. Everyone has the credit card thing there for you to do it. And I would just say, can you kindly do this? And they're like, why? Why don't you do it? I'm like, well, because I'm blind. Oh, I'm sorry. So I get that all the time, and I think that's also why, you made the comment that Republican Democrat views, that I have both, but I've been through so much that that stuff's not that big of a deal.
Well, I mean, it's an interesting, I'm trying to put myself in your shoes for a moment to see, first of all, the rudeness or the assumption, like, if I have to swipe your card for you, or you're just like, you're, stupid or lazy, if that's my if that's my default explanation. And then when I discover that, there's an actual physical reason I'm apologetic, that's, that's probably my worldview on everyone who isn't successful, right? Like, those people who, are disadvantaged, well, it's because they're lazy or stupid, as opposed to any sort of structural impediments to their success. And I'm wondering if your experience tends to make, yourself tends to make you more empathetic and understanding to others, rather than so quick to judge the way you get judged.
Partially, yes. So I find that I am very open-minded because of that. I mean, I'm open-minded because, my story of, being raised by a single father and losing my mother at 4 years old. So I understand that, and being raised by an immigrant, and then living on multiple continents, having an interracial family, being legally blind, promoting plant-based. So all these things have like developed me into a person, and made me compassionate. But then also, because I have this physical challenge, I think it allows me to promote people to do better and not be lazy and not constantly complain. I mean, my daughter said to me yesterday, like on Wednesday, the teacher switches up the desks where the kids eat lunch. And she's like, I didn't get to sit with them today. That's not fair. And I was like, no. We don't say things are not fair. Okay. We accept things, and some things we have to work for. Okay. But this mindset of constantly saying, woe is me. Cause I've done the victim mentality. I felt sorry for myself. And it did not work out well. It was terrible. So we can have compassion, for others, but victim mentality is not good. And I mean, my family has faced discrimination. When I started dating my husband, my family wasn't for it. His family wasn't for it. So I faced that type of discrimination as well. But I appreciate all those challenges, because if I didn't have those challenges, if I just came from an easy breezy life, then I wouldn't be able to make these moves that I am making. So I love those challenges, and I try to get other people to see those challenges. I mean, like I said, I have a lot of high school students supporting me. So I sit down with them and I talk about things. I'm like, what are the things that you don't like? What are the things that bother you? And of course, some of the things are just, they're in high school, right? So they're going to complain about that. And some of the things are good. So when they tell me these things that are at a high school level mentality of complaining about, I can't just say, I agree with you. Let me let me go talk to that teacher. I got to say, hey, buddy, like, we got to toughen up here and respect these teachers too. Okay. You want the respect, you have to give the respect. It's not just the teachers respect you, or, what are you giving back? What assets are you contributing to society? And I think the fact that, you'll hear these complaints sometimes, and I'm just like, you're telling me these complaints, but I've lived in India and I've seen the children who can't go to school because they have to sell flowers on the street to make $1 a day. You're telling me these complaints that you can't get to someplace because you don't have money to buy a car. I'm blind. You can give me all the money in the world. I still can't drive that car. Not till Elon Musk makes me a better car. So just challenging people to look beyond. We all have challenges, okay? Whether the challenge is racial discrimination, or whether the challenge is religious discrimination or a physical challenge, we all have challenges. So what do we do now? We don't say, woe is me. We say, whoa, let's go. Like, let's go. Let's make that change. And I accept my challenges. I will work to make things better for not just me, but for other people. And so I think, having my blindness definitely benefits me and hopefully benefits others.
So as we come to a close, you mentioned at the beginning that anyone who's a U.S. citizen can help. So for people who are listening to this and they want to help, they don't just have to be in Pinellas County. They don't just have to be in Florida. What would you like people to do if they want to support your candidacy?
Yes, go to mariaforstudents.com, mariaforstudents.com. They can, they can also write the word for, both work. But I can take donations right there. If people want to volunteer, phone banking or social media marketing, any of that is great. You can be anywhere in the world, as long as, I believe green card holders can also volunteer, but U.S. citizens might be the only ones who can donate. But donate, volunteer, all of that. We need to spread the word. Only 53,000 people voted last election for school board candidate. So we need people knowing that August 23rd is the date they need to come out and vote to get me elected. Okay.
Maria Solanki, thank you so much for the advocacy, for the push to plant-based and healthy meals, and for taking the time today.
Thank you. This is you've covered so much in this interview. Thank you so much.
Take care and good luck. All right, that's a wrap. Let's see. Garden news. We just got back yesterday from 12 days in the northeast, in New Jersey, in New York, and Pennsylvania. And so the garden's a wild, unruly, fecund mess that we're seeing what's been going on. There's been a lot of rain here in our absence, and the grass is growing so high in the yard that sometimes it's hard to see parts of the garden. But we're going to, roll up our sleeves and apply that elbow grease and get things rolling again. There are a fair amount of greens in the garden. Last night we had some garden mustard greens and kale, so they might be hidden a little bit by all the weeds, but they are there nonetheless. And in movement news, my foot is healing nicely. I actually jogged for about a quarter of a mile when I was in Princeton last week, and it felt okay. So I'm getting ready. I've been doing a lot of rehab exercises around core stability rather than focusing on core, spinal flexibility and stuff like that. So hopefully I'm making some good progress there as well, and we'll be ready to start running again in June and hopefully compete in Ultimate Nationals in Denver mid-July. All right, time for thanks. Thanks to Will Ridenauer for allowing me to use his beautiful song Sabali Dawn, The Dance of Peace. You can find more of Will's music at his website, willridenauer.com. And of course, thanks to all of you Plant Yourself podcast patrons. Kim Harrison, Lynn McClellan, Brittany Porter, Dominic Maurer, Barbara Whitney, Tammy Black, Amy Good, Amanda Hatherley, Mary Jane Wheeler, Ellen Kennelly, Melissa Cobb, Rachel Behrens, Tina Scharf, Tina Ahern, Jen Filikanovsky, David Bizek, The Mysterious Michelle X, Elsbeth Feldman, Leah Stoller, Alan Christensen, Colleen Peck, Michelle Landry, Josina, Sarah Durkis, Kelly Cameron, Janet Selby, Claire Adams, Tom Franzek, Jeanette Bennett, Gila Sert, David Donahue, Blair Cyber, Dorona Vizov, Gio and Carolyn Argentati, Jody Friesner, Misha Rosen, Michael Warbeck, Aviva Lael, Alicia Lemus, Val Linneman, Nick Harper, Bandana Chawley, Molly Levine, The Inscrutable Harry R., Susan Laverty, The Panda Vegan, Craig Kovic, Adam Scharf, Karen Burry, Heather Morgan, Nigel Davies, Marion Blum, Teresa Koppel, Julian Watkins, Breed O'Connell, Sharon Hirschman, Linda Ayat, Holm Hedegaard, Isa Tuzinwa, Connie Hainline, Aaron Greer, Alicia Davis, Heather O'Connor, Carolyn Jensen, Sherry Olakoski of Plant Powered for Health, Karen Smith, Scott Morani, Karen and Joe Crabtree, Kirby Burton, Teresa Carell, Kevin McCauley, Elizabeth Rothschild, Ann Jesse, Cheryl Dwyer, Jenny Hazelton, Peter W. Evans, Dennis Bird, Darby Kelly, Laurie Fanny, Linnea Lundquist, Emily Iconelli, Levy Wallach, Rosamund McAtee, Dan Picorni, Stephen Leenan, Patty DiMartino, Mike and Donna Kartz, Deanne Bishop, Bilberry Elf, Marjorie Lewis, Tricia Adams, Nancy Sheldon, Lindsay Bayshore, Gunmarie Hagan, Tracy Gullidge, Laura Heaton, Meg from Mama Says, Stacey Stokes, Ben Savage, Michael Kay, David Hughes, Connie Rogers, Claire England, Sally Robertson, Paranganchi, Amy Daly, Brian Tourville, Mark Jeffrey Johnson, Josie Dempsey, Karen Schmidt, Pamela Hayden, Emily Perryman, Allison Corbett, Richard Stone, Lauren Vaught of Edible Musings, Aaron Hasty, Sean Owen, Sagar Naik, Erica Piedra, Danielle Roberts, Michael Lushton, Sarah Johnson, Catherine Floyd, for your generous support of the podcast. That's it for now. As always, be well, my friends.